Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to the Notice of Preparation Scoping discussion for the City of Elk Grove's General Plan Amendments and update to our Vehicle Miles Traveled Standards. I'm Christopher Jordan. I'm the Director of Strategic Planning and Innovation. I'm joined today by Corey Risha from our consultant team at Ascent Environmental. We're going to go over today briefly what the project entails, what we'll be studying in the subsequent environmental impact report and the issues included, and then talk about ways that you can help provide comments on the scoping for the document, and then once it's available in draft form, comments on that document as well. Before we go much farther, I'll go ahead and give you a quick overview of what is included in the project. As I mentioned, this is an amendment to the general plan and a number of corollary pieces within it. Elk Grove, of course, is located at the southern edge of the greater Sacramento metropolitan area, as you can see highlighted on the map on the left. The project area includes not just the city limits itself, but our broader general plan planning area, which includes additional land south of Kammer and Grant Line roads. You can see that again highlighted in the yellow. On the right-hand side is the general plan land use map, including the proposed revisions. And you can see those areas that are outside the existing city limits highlighted in gray. Those are referred to as study areas for potential future expansion and annexation. So some of the major components of the project, first off, it includes the creation of a new community plan, which for now we're calling the Livable Employment Area Community Plan. This plan area will encompass a portion of the existing Southeast Policy area, as well as development along the Promenade Parkway corridor. It will also overlap in part with the South Study area. The plan here will include a series of land use policy changes and land use program changes to establish what we refer to as transect-based land use designations and corollary policies to develop a mixed use land use area. These will include opportunities for residential, live work spaces, retail, and office uses in neighborhood and mixed use formats of varying intensities and densities. Also, as part of this, we'll be updating the Vehicle Miles Traveled Policy, or VMT policy, and thresholds because of the variety of land use changes included here, as well as an update to the underlying travel demand model, which forms the foundation of the VMT policy. We will be updating those metrics and resetting them based on the new modeling results. Some other key elements that are in the project, including the land use revisions. Some of you may be aware the city is studying potentially relocating the zoo to the Elk Grove area. So the site identified for that has been included in the project description. The environmental analysis will not specifically approve the zoo site itself, but does include the potential trip factors that may be incorporated as part of that project into the analysis. There are some other land use adjustments that are being considered as well, predominantly in the Old Town area, that align it with the update to the Old Town special planning area that's occurring now. Because of all the land use changes, we're also going to be updating the development capacity numbers, which are articulated in Chapter 3 of the general plan. There are increases in the dwelling units, some population capacity, and some decreases in jobs in the net total, although some of those jobs are being transferred from the existing Southeast Policy area into the South Study area as part of the alignment of changes there and the creation of the new community plan. So here, just in brief, up on the screen is the proposed land use map and all the adjustments that are included in there. You can take a look at this in more detail in the notice of preparation itself. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Corey, who's going to walk through the particulars on the environmental review. Corey.
Thank you, Christopher. Again, my name is Corey Risha. I am the project manager with Ascent Environmental, and I will be discussing the environmental review process for this project. Next slide, please. So first of all, what is Sequa? Sequa is the California Environmental Quality Act. It's a public disclosure process, and public participation is essential to this process. Part of Sequa is that you must avoid or mitigate for environmental impacts. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that certification of an EIR does not indicate approval of a project. Next slide, please. So what is an EIR? It's an environmental impact report is what EIR stands for. It's an informational document, and the idea is to disclose all potential environmental effects of a proposed project. Now, these are proposed environmental impacts of a project. An EIR also identifies mitigation measures that would help reduce the impacts of the project. An EIR also is to describe feasible alternatives to the proposed project, which are helpful for understanding how impacts could be reduced by alternatives to a project. And an EIR must be certified in order for a project to be approved. So it's a kind of a two-step process. The certification of an EIR document happens prior to a decision-making body making a final decision on whether to approve a project. Next slide, please. So a little bit about what an EIR does and does not do. An EIR does disclose the potential environmental effects of a project. An EIR does identify mitigation measures, and an EIR does describe feasible alternatives to the project. An EIR, however, does not require mitigation for existing environmental conditions. An EIR also does not advocate for a project under evaluation. Also, an EIR does not require project denial due to significant environmental impacts. And an EIR also does not address social or economic issues such as property value. Next slide, please. So what we have here is a subsequent environmental impact report is what we are preparing for this project. So under Sequa Guidelines section 15162, a subsequent document can be prepared if an EIR has already been certified for a project, but certain conditions are met. In this case, the original EIR that we're working with is the City of Elk Grove's General Plan Update EIR that was certified in 2019. So this subsequent environmental impact report will evaluate the potential environmental impacts of the proposed changes to the adopted general plan and VMT standards. Next slide, please. So the structure of the subsequent EIR. First, it'll start off with an executive summary that will describe the project and give a brief overview of the alternatives that are considered. Also, the executive summary will also include a table of all impacts in those conclusions and any mitigation measures that are to be applied. The EIR or subsequent EIR will also have an introduction, project description, and a robust discussion of the environmental impacts and mitigation measures. Now, because this is a subsequent EIR, it will have a discussion of the impacts and conclusions from the 2019 General Plan Update EIR. Also, the subsequent EIR will discuss cumulative impacts, alternatives, and other sections required by statute. Okay, so topics to be evaluated in the subsequent EIR. We've got a list here on the screen: aesthetics, air quality, cultural and tribal cultural resources, energy, greenhouse gases and climate change, noise and vibration, population and housing, public services, recreation, transportation, and utilities and service systems. Next slide, please. Now, there are several topics that are scoped out of the analysis for this document. Those include agriculture and forestry resources, biological resources, geology and soils, hazards and hazardous materials, land use and planning, mineral resources, and wildfire. So, agency and public input. As I mentioned earlier, public input and comments are a cornerstone of Sequa. And there are many opportunities for public input. The first, which this is part of right now, occurs during the notice of preparation. So it's a 30-day public review period that we also call the scoping period. We're in that right now. And this recording right now, this is our scoping meeting presentation to inform you of the project and invite comments. So the next step is the draft subsequent EIR, and that's also another opportunity for public comment. That document will address any comments received in regards to the notice of preparation. And that EIR, the subsequent EIR, generally has a 45-day public review period. After that, the final SEIR will respond to comments received regarding the draft SEIR. And again, there will be time for that to be reviewed by the public. And finally, after all of that, And if the city chooses to certify the EIR, then they can consider and make a decision on the general plan amendments and updates of the VMT standards. So a brief bit overview schedule. The NOP for this project will be published on February 18th, and that's when the scoping period begins. And that scoping period will end on March 21st. So please get comments in by 5 p.m. on March 21st, 2022. We anticipate it'll take a few months to get the draft SEIR prepared, and it'll likely be available for public review sometime in the summer of 2022. And following the draft EIR will be the final EIR, which will probably be in about fall of 2022. Now, how to provide input on the scope of the EIR. It is recommended that your comments be in writing, and comments can be submitted via the comment portal on this website, or you can send them to the address listed on the screen or the email address that's listed on the screen. As we mentioned before, the notice of preparation comment period closes on March 21st, 2022.
Great, thank you, Corey. And thank you everybody for watching the video today and taking a look at the notice of preparation. Again, we invite your comments. I'll go back one slide. So again, you can see the contact information, though it is on the website here. Again, please do get any comments in by March 21st, and we look forward to hearing from you. So thank you again, and have a great rest of your day.